Hello everyone, in this video I'll be ranking the Baldur's Gate 3 locations on a tier list. So we have lots of great areas here, pretty much every area in the game, and I'll be breaking them down, just kind of ranking them based on how fun they are and what they got going on. First one that we got here is the Arcane Tower. This is an Act 1 in the Underdark. What's nice about this spot is it has Bernard, and it also has the Club of the Hill Giants. So this is a club that can set your strength very high, and it's actually a pretty nice weapon to have for some of your classes early on in the game. The Arcane Tower is really difficult though. It has those arcane turrets that are always a pain to deal with. Now the best way to deal with them is actually to use lightning damage, as that's what they're weak to. But if you don't deal at least 10 damage to them, you're not going to do any damage at all. Witch Bolt is not my favorite spell, but Witch Bolt is actually pretty useful here to be able to take them out. But overall, I would say the Arcane Tower is probably somewhere to A to B tier. It's a little bit frustrating, but it does have a really nice item there, so it is worth going to in Act 1. I'm going to put it in the B tier to start, but I could potentially move it up. Next, we got the Bladed Village. Now, this is one of the first locations that we go to in the game, and I actually think it does a pretty good job. Like, in any RPG, there's going to be, like, that basic village or beginner area that's just not too challenging, but has some nice charm to it. I think out of all the Act 1 location, Act 1 in general had a lot of really good stuff going on. Now, there's some pretty funny scenes, like there's the bugbear and the ogre getting it on that happens in here, and you get some pretty funny dialogue there. The Bladed Village has some pretty decently easy fights and a good starting location. I would say the Bladed Village is probably A tier. There's nothing too frustrating about this area. You can have combat on top of the roofs, you can knock people down. There's a lot of ways to test out your builds here, and I think the Bladed Village is not a bad starting location. Next, we got the Blushing Mermaid. This is actually a really scenic spot in Act 3 of Baldur's Gate. So, the Blushing Mermaid is that tavern that has the ship built out of it. It is really coolly designed, and it's actually based off of a very popular spot in D&D. It's not one-to-one recreated, but still a really nice spot. I think the Blushing Mermaid is, I would put in the A tier. Act 3 has some really nice locations, and I think that the Blushing Mermaid is a solid one. There isn't a whole lot that happens at this location compared to a lot of other Act 3 locations, but I still think it's pretty scenic. I did the first person mod on Baldur's Gate 3, and I walked underneath the ship, and it just looked really cool to see it from that perspective, so yeah, I'll put it in the A tier. Next, we got Bual's Temple. This isn't too much of a difficult area, but it has a really difficult, you can sacrifice one of your teammates to get a very nice blessing from Bual, but I don't know. I don't love the fish people. It just kind of freaks me out every time that I've been here in a game. I don't recommend sacrificing your teammates either. I want to put it in the C tier. It does have a nice bonus that you can get from it, but compared to some of the other places here, it just leaves a little bit, it's just not as good. Next, we have Cazadors Palace, and I hate Cazador. All my homies hate Cazador. If you like Astarion, you probably hate Cazador too. This spot is not too bad. It's just we're there to save our boy Astarion from his vampire spawn. So you can ascend Astarion here, which makes him absolutely evil. I would never recommend doing that unless you really want to have an evil playthrough, and don't do it if you're romancing him, because he won't value you if you're in a romance and you ascend Astarion. Cazador's place is not bad. I'm going to put it in the F tier. It'll be my first controversial pick. Someone may disagree with that. It's just really the Cazador fight, which is fine. I just hate Cazador, so I'm going to put it down low, because I have to keep this balanced. Keep in mind, some people don't like when I put things in a low tier if they like it, and I understand that, but I'm trying to keep this balanced. I don't want to just put everything in the S tier. But next we have our first S tier with the Circus of the Last Days. Now, what makes this such a fun place is Dribbles the Clown. You get to have a unique dialogue option with him, depending on who you bring with your party. I highly recommend bringing Minthara, because she has some hilarious dialogue options there. There's actually a lot that happens in the Circus of Last Days, and I think that the fight here is pretty fun. It's in Rivington, so before you get into the main city of Baldur's Gate, and it kind of sets the tone for what the city is going to be like. It's full of chaos, and I think it is a really fun spot. Also, the genie is here, and the genie will take you to two of the best items in the game. So if you cheat and win the genie's game, he will teleport you to a jungle. In the jungle, you can find the legendary spear, or the legendary trident, the Nyrulna, which is extremely useful. If you throw it, it returns to your hand, and it deals thunder damage in a huge area when you throw it. Extremely powerful weapon. On top of that, it has the best ring, I would say, in the game, with the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel. What that does is whenever you attack, you get to use a bonus action to cast an illusion or an enchantment spell. So you can attack and then cast Hold Person or Confusion and crowd control people too. It makes it in a very powerful build. On top of all of that, the Circus of the Last Stage just has a lot going on, so easy S tier. Next we have the Counting House. This is a pretty big involvement in the game. This is where part of Min's quest line is here. It's basically a big bank. It's like Gringotts from Hogwarts, but in Baldur's Gate. There are some chests here that you have to do a 30 DC I guess sleight of hand check on, and you can't use knock on them. So it has some of the most difficult chests in the game, and for people that just been blasting chests apart, you can't actually do that here. I would put the Counting House in the B tier. It's kind of a more forgettable location in Act 3 compared to some of the other spots that we have, so I'm going to put it in the B tier. Next we have Creshielek. Now this is actually a spot that I really like because typically, well, one, you get the Gloves Dexterity there. Two, you're going to learn a little bit more about the Githyanki. And three, you can get the ability to cast your Elithid powers as a bonus action there. That is extremely useful. You also get to see Vlaakith, and she can use Command Wish Death on you and literally just one-shot your entire team. I want to put the Creshielek in the A tier. There's a lot going on there. I always end up taking out every single enemy there for a lot of XP, which is awesome. There are some ways you can get extra XP there, so really good spot to level. It also has the Blood of Lathlander a little bit further on in the Kresh. I'd probably put that at the top of the A tier. It's one of the better spots in Act 1. It's interesting in the lore of Baldur's Gate 3 as well, and why the Githyanki are even there in the first place. They kind of take it over, but yeah, I want to put it in the A tier. Next, we have the Elfsong Tavern. I'm also going to put this in the S tier. This, in my opinion, is the best camp because you can get this room for free, mind you. If you go to Act 3, you can just talk to the keep, do a persuasion or intimidation check, and you can get the Elfsong Tavern for free. Otherwise, it's like a few hundred gold. Highly recommend using it because the other camp in Act 3 is nice, but the Elfsong Tavern is just, it has all your teammates together in one spot. So if you do things like if you do aid, which you can upcast and give your team more health, they're all grouped together for easy casting, which makes it really nice. The Elfsong Tavern, pretty awesome spot overall. Next, we got the Emerald Grove. Now, this is where the Druids are in Act 1, and it actually has quite a heavy involvement. You either have to help out the Grove or raid the Grove. I would put the Emerald Grove in the A tier, probably top of the A tier. There's a really fun fight. Now, you can do it either way. You can protect the Grove and go attack the Goblin Camp, or you can attack the Emerald Grove. It's a very challenging fight to attack it, but I think it is a really fun way to go about playing, especially on a second playthrough if you want to go more of an evil route. What I did on my second playthrough is I played as the Dark Urge, we attacked the Grove, and then I turned good after I realized that was not the right thing to do, but we still got Minthara. Next, we got Ethels Bog. This isn't a bad spot either. Actually, nope. I changed my mind. Ethels Bog actually kind of sucks because whenever you go to Ethels Bog, you have to go through her whole dungeon area, and it's confusing. It's difficult. I've had my total party get wiped a couple times doing this, especially in your first playthrough with all those poison vents. Kind of frustrating. I'm actually going to put Ethels Bog in the F tier. The hag fight's not bad, and you got to get the hag's hair, or you don't have to get it, but it's a good item to get for that +1 to a stat, because then you can take your 17 up to an 18 and get that extra modifier from it. So Ethels Bog's worth doing. It just sucks at certain points in the game. Make sure you bring in a monk would be useful because you have to jump through a lot of sections. So yeah, I'll put that in the F tier. Next we have the Goblin Camp. I think the Goblin Camp is probably, I would say, an S tier. It's really fun to fight through. It's such a interesting spot because typically in games, whenever you go into like a goblin area, you're usually just going and blasting and bonking everyone. But in the Goblin Camp, you can run in there and you can explore it. You can talk to people. It has Levitar behind us, who gives you a different buff. I screwed up my first ever time playing through this, and the Goblin Camp has a lot of interesting interactions. You can go save Volo, you can side with Minthara, you can fight Minthara. There's 3 goblin leaders that you have to beat, and you can rescue Halsin. There's so much that happens in the Goblin Camp. I can't put it anywhere as lower than S tier because of how much fun that you're going to have there. Act 1 has a lot of really great spots between like the Grove, the camp, Bladed Village. Like, I think Act 1, they put obviously a lot of attention and love in Act 1, but the Goblin Camp itself is just a really great spot. Next, we have the Grim Forge. This is also another really interesting spot. This is in Act 1, kind of into Act 2, but it's Act 1. It segues into Act 2 though. You get some really good armor here. You can go to the adamantine yeah, I can't even English right now. It has a lot of good items you can forge. It has some pretty interesting interactions. You can get some exploding barrels that do a ton of damage. Grimforge is probably A tier, I would say. There's a lot of really good spots that you can visit in the Grimforge. There's some really fun fights. There's actually some fights that are actually crazy large in terms of their scale. And you got a lot of interesting choices that you can make in the Grimforge. I think that this is a pretty solid spot overall. Next, we have the Guild Hall. This is where Nine Fingers is, and it's heavily related to Minska's quest in Act 3. I highly recommend having Minsk and Jaheira here, because Jaheira knows Nine Fingers and her whole guild. I feel like it could have played a bigger role in Act 3, but I feel like Act 3 was not rushed, but they just didn't have as much attention to or they didn't have enough time to put into it compared to the other acts. So Guild Hall, I'd put in the B tier. Not a bad spot, but I highly recommend always bringing Minsk and Jaheira here. They have great dialogue options. Next, we have the House of Grief. This is a really challenging fight. I think that this is actually the hardest fight in the game. We have another one, the House of Hope, coming up soon, but I actually hated the House of Grief my first ever time doing it. I hated it the second time. I'm still going to put it in the A tier. Like Cazadors Place, it's a challenging fight. Cazadors Palace is... I'm just putting it there as almost like a controversial pick in a sense, I guess, because don't love Cazador, don't love Viconia anymore, and you can actually give Shadowheart to her. Don't recommend doing that either, but Viconia is a character from Baldur's Gate 2, which I was playing yesterday, and she's pure evil. The House of Grief is a very challenging spot. You do get the Mirror of Loss there, so you can get a nice +2 to one of your stats, which is awesome. But I don't know. The fight is extremely difficult, so if you have a cleric on your team, I would recommend using their special one-time only spell during this fight because it's going to help a ton during it. So, A tier. Next, we have the House of Healing. This isn't a bad spot per se. It's just not like of Act 2. Act 2 didn't have like some really strong spots. I'm going to put the House of Healing probably in the C tier. There's 3 main Thorms that you have to fight before you fight Ketheric Thorm in the Act 2. So House of Healing, just I feel like a little bit lackluster compared to some other spots. Act 2 in general, compared to the highs of Act 1, didn't really hit the same notes, I find. Still not a bad spot, but I'm going to put in C tier. Next, we got House of Hope. Easy S tier. House of Hope is where Raphael is. You can talk to his Harleap there. You can do some stuff with them, and then you can chirp Raphael for being bad in bed with it. Pretty funny. Like, there's a lot of interesting dialogue that can happen in here. And it has the best fight in the game. Probably one of the most memorable boss fights of all time for me personally. Raphael's fight is like a Disney villain fight. There's singing. He sings. If you cast silence on him, he stops singing. So many levels of detail in the House of Hope. It's an extremely fun fight, although it is extremely challenging like the House of Grief, but very memorable. As I said, probably the most memorable boss fight in this game. So easy S tier. Next we have the Iron Throne. This is a friggin' challenging spot. Oh my god. This is related to Will's questline, also related to Omalum, so a lot of people will end up doing the Iron Throne. I'm actually going to put it a little bit lower because I struggled a lot with it. You have only a certain amount of turns to get in and get out and do your thing. And Omalum helps a lot because he can teleport you and he can teleport himself and one ally out. It's fun. It could go B or C tier. I'm going to try and keep this as balanced as I can. So I'll actually put the Iron Throne a little bit lower. Maybe something like that. I liked it, but not as much as some of the other spots. Maybe B tier. It has some I'll put it in B tier. It has some heavy involvement in the plot. It's extremely challenging though. Next we have Janeth Estate. I don't know about you guys, but this bugged out my computer every single time that I played this. The poltergeist for some reason would cause my thing to lag for like it would show that they're moving, but it would take so long for the poltergeist to move. For that I'm going to put in the F tier just because of how frustrating it was. It was bad on my first ever playthrough. I played Baldur's Gate right as it released, and it was difficult then. I played it recently. The poltergeists are still doing the same thing. I tried to beat this area, but it lagged out and actually crashed my PC multiple times, which is weird. It's the only place in all of Baldur's Gate that I ever got issues, and a lot of other people got issues here too. And I tried it on 2 different PCs with 2 different graphics cards, a 3060 and a 4070. It just couldn't handle this for whatever reason. Maybe it's CPU bound. I don't know. I have a good CPU as well, but Something about this place just crashes it every time. Next we have the Last Light Inn. This is not a bad fight. I actually like the Last Light Inn. I'd probably put it in the B tier. It's a solid fight, and it's actually a pretty challenging one at the start of Act 2. Act 2 in general actually has a lot of really challenging fights that are rough. So I'll put that in the B tier. Last Light Inn is very integral if you're going on the good route to Act 2. So for a lot of people, this is an important location. Next we have the Lathlander Temple. It's a challenging spot, and I think the best part about it is if you were to leave Astarion in the thing and get him evaporated and then revive him. Look up the dialogue that happens. I can't reenact it that well. Astarion's voice actor Neil Newbin did an incredible job with it. I'm going to put Lathlander Temple probably A tier to B tier. It's frustrating at points. You have to like jump around, blast some things that'll shoot at you, open the doors to progress through. You get the Blood of Lathander, which is a really good mace that you can use the entire game. It'll illuminate you. You really want to have it for Act 2. It helps out so much throughout there, and it's great for Shadowheart. It also gives you Sunbeam, which is an extremely powerful spell, and it'll stack your Radiating Orbs, Reverberation, you name it. Really good. Next we have the Elith Colony. This isn't a bad spot. It's gross. It's like the insides of people and stuff, and that's where they do their feeding. It's everything about this really gives me the ick. I'm gonna put it in the C tier. It's not F tier, like it's not a bad spot. It's kind of confusing how it loops around. You can get the Golden Gloss helmet here, which is one of my favorite helmets. It's the Oathbreaker Knight, his helmet, which looks super cool. So if you want to get that helmet, it's in there. It's also in Act 3, but you can find it pretty easily here. You can find Blurg here. You can find Mind Flayers here. This has one of the best fights. If we count the final fight with Merkel, I think that's my favorite boss fight in this game, potentially, besides, obviously, Raphael. Ketheric's conclusion to the story is really well done. Just the Elith Colony I don't love. It's gross. Next we have Moonrise Towers. Moonrise Towers are pretty fun. I would probably put them in the A tier. It's a good fight. You get to fight Ketheric at the top of it. It's a tower, so you're climbing all the way up. There's a lot that happens in here. And what's cool about Moonrise Towers is Ketheric took it over, and if you play as an evil character, you can do a lot of stuff out of here. I actually highly recommend doing an evil character in your second playthrough just to see what it's like in Moonrise. At this point in the game, I went for my Dark Urge turned into a Resist Dark Urge, became kind of a good character because there's a lot of messed up stuff that happens there, and you can save Minthara. Highly recommend that. Next we have the Myconid Colony. This is not a bad spot either. I'd probably put this into the B tier. The Myconid Colony is in Act 1 in the Underdark. It's where all the mushroom people are. You get some decent items here, and there's a lot of quests that actually originate from here. You can also find Glut, who is he's a mushroom person, and you can get him there. So yeah, I'll put that in a B tier. Pretty decent spot, and it's kind of memorable. All the mushroom people there in the Underdark. It's really cool. Wraithwind Toll House. Don't love this spot. You fight the Gold Lady there, which is... So, Malice Thorm is the uncle of Ketheric, and Theobald Thorm is the son of Ketheric. But we don't actually know who the... I forget her name. The goth girl. The golden girl. I'll probably put this in the F tier, another spot that I don't love. Yeah, I'll put it there. The boss fight isn't too bad itself. The rewards are okay. You can get flesh to gold, which is like flesh to stone, but gold. It's all right. I'll put F tier. Next, we got the sewers. The sewers are pretty solid, actually. I'm actually going to put in the A tier. Some people might not like the sewers that much, but what's cool about the sewers is there's so much to fight in there in Act 3, and it connects all the way through the underground, and I think the sewers is an underrated spot for sure. Some people may think it's a pretty terrible spot, but there's a lot of really fun fights there. It's actually quite large of an area too, and there's some pretty good loot. And it's Act 3, but it gives you a bit of a dungeon feel for Act 3, which Act 3 is mostly in the city itself, but here we get to get some different scenery. As ugly as it is, it's the sewers. There's some hidden secrets down here, kind of similar into Elden Ring, how there's the sewers underneath Leyndell. Underneath Baldur's Gate, there's some dark stuff happening in the city. Next we have the Sorceress Caress. This is an alright spot. Some people absolutely love this because you can sleep with people there. I'm going to put it probably B tier. It's not something I care about too much in a video game, but I know a lot of people like it. If I were to put it in C tier, I'd probably have someone complain. I'm going to put it in the C tier. Not something I hate, but it's not something that I like it's an okay spot, I guess. Some people love it, and I can understand that, but I'm just going to throw it in the C tier. Next, we have the Sorceress Sundries. I love this spot. I'm putting it in the S tier. You get to go into the basement, and then it's a huge dungeon down there. You also can get the Marka Heshker, which is the best staff in the game, which allows you to cast Chain Lightning for free. So literally anyone can cast Chain Lightning if they grab this staff, even Astarion. There's a lot of really good gear here. Not just that, but you also can get the Artistry of War, which is a spell that is like Magic Missile, but way better. You can also find Dethrone, which is another really powerful spell down there. Wizards can learn these spells permanently by putting them in their scribe book, which is awesome. You can also find the Diva spell. You can find... there's a lot. Even Gale's questline is heavily involved in the Sorceress Sundries, so... You can also, there's so much that goes on here. If you rescued the Night Song, you can sell her for 5,000 gold, sell her location to Lorokan, or the best thing in the game that you can do is get her to go there, fly there, pick Lorokan up over her head, and smash him over her knee. One of the coolest scenes in the game is when she fights him in the Sorceress Sundries, so easy S tier. Next we have the Steel Watch Foundry. This is a pretty fun fight. Bring lightning, my biggest recommendation. All the Steel Watch are weak to lightning damage. So if you have one chain lightning, you can actually shut down a lot of them, or lightning bolt. I'm putting in the A tier. It's a pretty fun fight. Can be a little bit frustrating at times, but if you go in with like a Tempest Cleric and a Storm Sorcerer, you'll have a great time. Next is the Temple of Baal. This is another one that I would probably put in the S tier. A lot of the end game happens here is where you fight Orin. This is where when you open up the game and you see that temple there, that's where this is, the Temple of Baal. Pretty heavily involved in the main plot of the game, and it's a really interesting spot. When you go to beat the game, you have to go to this area anyways, so yeah, I put it in the S tier. The Orin fight's pretty funky. You can use attacks to knock enemies off the platforms that have the Unstoppable, and then you can use Gale or any magician to use Magic Missile, upcast it to remove the stacks of Unstoppable off of Orin, and then Heavier Paladin or whatever go in and Divine Smite. I was able to one-shot Orin in this area, which made me feel big brain at the time. It's a pretty fun area. Next is the Temple of Shar. Now, this is fun the first time you do it. It's fun the first time you do it. I'm actually going to put it in the F tier. I'm sure that there's going to be some people that'll agree with me on this one. Temple of Shar is extremely difficult. It's puzzle-based. Well, it's not extremely difficult. It's just tedious to do every time that you play through the game, because you have to do the 3 trials. You have to get the stones, and then you can progress. And it's annoying to do it on 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th playthrough. It's not bad, but it's heavily tied to the plot of the game, so you pretty much have to do it. And it pretty much makes you want... You don't have to bring Shadowheart, but you kind of are incentivized to bring her for the Temple of Shar. So I'm going to put in the F tier because it's just tedious. It's fun to do the first time, but tedious to do the next. Umberlee Temple. Now, this is related to the Wave Mother's Robe, which is a pretty good item. I'm going to probably put in the B tier. I feel like this questline just was over way too quickly. It's a very gorgeous spot, so I'll put it in the B tier because it looks really nice, and you get the Wave Mother's Robe there, so pretty nice item, but yeah, B tier is the best I got for that. Waning Moon. This is where you find... this is actually a really short area. To keep this balanced, I'm just going to throw it in C tier. You find Feasible Thorm there, you can drink with him, and then he explodes. And that's pretty much it for the Waning Moon. There's not a lot that goes on there. But Theobald's there, so some people like him. And Worm's Rock. I think Worm's Rock is another A tier. Worm's Rock is heavily involved in the plot of Act 3. There's a lot that happens here. It's a pretty cool castle, and I highly recommend being a partial Elithid, because you can fly up to the roof of this place really easily, and it makes the fight so much easier and different. But yeah, Worm's Rock's nice. It's very iconic in Act 3, so yeah, easy A tier. So there it is. There's all the locations. I did put some controversial ones, like Cazadors Palace can probably go into the C tier, so I'll put that there. But yeah, that is my take on the Baldur's Gate 3 locations or areas and ranking them on this tier list. So let me know in the comments your thoughts, where you would rank some of these. Maybe you would put them a little bit higher. I could probably even move like Blushing Mermaid down. Like some of these can go up or down. That's the thing with these. Some people get upset when I don't put their thing in the A tier and they think it's an A tier, but some of these can move around. It just depends on how you approach the situation. But there it is. There's my thoughts on the Baldur's Gate 3 location areas on a tier list. Hit that subscribe button below if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day, and I'll see you in the next one.